We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
The year is 1940. Hitler's army smashes Europe like a plague. The countries of Belgium, Netherlands, Poland, Denmark, and France have fallen victim to the triumphs of Hitler's ever-growing empire. There is still one country that still stands in Western Europe against all odds. The battle that took place in that summer 1940 would be a major turning point of the Second World War. It would be the Battle of Britain. The country of Britain, standing alone, was desperately trying to prevent a Nazi invasion. Hitler, eyeing out for his next prize, orders his generals to prepare for such assault, codenamed Operation Sea Lion. The man behind the spearhead was Commander Hermann Göring, a proud supporter of Hitler since the 1930s and a former pilot. Under his command was over 1,600 bombers, supported by another 1,200 fighters of the German Air Force, or the Luftwaffe. Göring had full command of airfields from Norway to France, ready to strike anywhere on the British Isles, plus some of the best, confidently trained and experienced pilots of the Luftwaffe. Within the German air fleet were slow bombers such as the Junkers Ju-88 and the Heinkel HE-111, supported by fearsome Ju-87 Stuka dive bombers, escorted with fighters such as the twin-engine, long-range Majorstreck Bf-110, and a more legendary monoplane, Majorstreck 109, an aircraft that was more heavily armed and faster in a dive compared to any British aircraft of the time. On the opposite end of the table was British Marshal Sir Hugh Downing of the Royal Air Force, or for short the RAF. Under his command was just barely over 900 fighters that were piloted not just by British pilots but men from Czechoslovakia, Poland, New Zealand, and Canadians. These young and experienced pilots would be equipped with Hawker Hurricanes and older aircraft designed from the early 30s. Also at their disposal were the newer Supermarine Spitfires, a highly stable aircraft and performed well in low and medium altitudes. Both aircraft were equipped with 8 machine guns apiece. Another key weapon under his command was a vast new revolutionary radar system. This gave the British an advantage knowing the location of incoming enemy aircraft, plus the ability to gather intelligence on the enemy. All this information was gathered into the RAF headquarters at Bentley Priory and closely examined for best course of action. Göring's orders were to pave the way for an invasion. The battle officially began on July 10th. The first phase of Göring's plan was to cut the supply lines of the British and squeeze in the country. He targeted destruction of British shipping and ports. The Germans, this was called Kanalkampf, or Channel War. This was going to be the first of many struggles for the RAF. Over July of 1940, attacks on port towns and shipping increased, and the British High Command struggled with these overwhelming raids. Downing did his best to conserve his fighters and primarily attacking the bombers. The Luftwaffe lost over 300 aircraft alone during the initial stage of the battle, and the RAF still held on. Göring, still confident of a victory, scheduled Adler Tag, or Eagle Day. The new plan was to target the RAF itself. This meant targeting its planes, airfields, aircraft factories, and ground repair stations. Due to bad weather, the plan wasn't put to action until August 13th. The Luftwaffe assaulted at first 5 key radar stations of southern England, a plot trying to blind the RAF. Ironically, the following day, 3 out of 5 radar installations were patched up and back into action. Following up the attack, the Germans upon the following days pressed attacks on the RAF airfields and installations. A series of hard-fought battles and dogfights occurred in the weeks leading up to September. The Luftwaffe targeted vital airfields called sector stations of the 12 RAF fighter group. These sector stations' main jobs were to scramble information from radar stations to other airfields to intercept the enemy. Due to the growing losses of bombers, Göring ordered his fighters to stick closer to the bombers. The RAF was beginning to crack. Their pilots, tired out and overstretched. The RAF was losing more aircraft and men they could replace. The British RAF was nearing its breaking point. On September 7, 1940, Hitler gave full command to change strategy. In a last attempt to break Britain, a full-out Luftwaffe assault struck London. The sky turned black from the column of aircraft of hundreds of German planes. Wave after wave of German planes bombed London. As a result, huge fires broke out. In spite of the London air raids, the RAF got some badly needed rest. By September 15th, the Germans again launched another attack on London, but this time the RAF was prepared. Over 60 fighters intercepted the Luftwaffe force. This became the main turning point of the battle. It became a slaughter for over 60 German fighters and bombers to a loss of only 26 RAF fighters. The battle would continue for another 6 weeks. On September 17th, Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. The Luftwaffe lost over 2,500 pilots to the RAF's 500. Hitler failed to calculate within a few years, on June 6, 1944, that small island nation he failed to crush would be used as a stepping stone for the liberation of Europe.
Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.